The galaxy remembered only a few moments in which everything changed, but none were as quiet, as deceptively small, as the night a lone human stood before the Tribunal of 12. A chamber forged from obsidian and starlight held its breath while representatives of 12 alien empires glared down with cold, predatory stillness. And at the center of the luminous floor, outlined by containment fields, the human stood unchained, unarmored, unafraid. He had traveled farther than any of his species, crossing borders policed by ancestral fear, drawn by a single whisper in the void. The artifact had called to him long before the empires knew of its awakening, long before they realized that the relic they worshipped as divine was reacting to something condemned. Something they believed unworthy of existing at all. They accused humanity of defiance. They accused humanity of corruption. They accused humanity of being the variable that disrupted their ancient order. And so they brought him here to break him. The air trembled as the tribunal began its assault. Projections of humanity's wars, mistakes, rebellions, and crimes flickered around him in towering holographic storms. Entire human cities rose and fell within shimmering prisms of judgment. Every flaw the species had ever carved into the timeline was weaponized, hurled like an accusation meant to crush the spirit of a single ambassador. They believed humans were fragile enough to crack beneath the weight of their history. But the man simply listened. His breathing steady. His stance rooted. His eyes reflecting not fear, but clarity, an understanding that every failure carved humanity into something more complex, more adaptable, more stubbornly alive. He felt the artifact pulsing through the galaxy like a second heartbeat. Outside the tribunal's sanctum, that relic, older than empires, rested beneath a cathedral of shifting crystal. It waited, dormant yet restless, sensing the rising storm of judgment in the chamber above. And as the aliens hurled more condemnations, their voices laced with ancient superiority, the artifact began to emit a frequency so low it rattled the very plates of the planet. The human felt it. Not as a sound, but as memory, something buried within the species long before they learned to speak, long before they learned to fear the night sky. The tribunal continued its assault, summoning more images, humans standing defiant against odds that should have broken them, humans refusing submission, humans burning with a fire the galaxy never understood. They showed these moments as evidence of danger, but to the human they were reminders of what made his species impossible to predict. The chamber lights flickered, the floor vibrated, something ancient had awakened. The figures of the tribunal paused, their composed faces twisting in confusion as the energy field stuttered. A deep hum rolled across the planet, rising, sharpening, becoming a tone of recognition, a tone that shook dust from forgotten catacombs and awakened every sensor within 100 systems. The artifact was responding, not to them, to him. The tribunal members exchanged frantic signals, scrambling for control, but the human simply closed his eyes. He felt the universe narrowing to a single point of convergence. A moment long in the making. A truth carved into the roots of creation, and then the hum became a voice, not spoken, not heard, but understood, a whisper from a relic that outlived suns. The artifact had chosen, and the tribunal suddenly realized that their accusations no longer mattered. The story of the human condemned by all had only begun to unfold. The chamber shuddered as the voice from the artifact resonated deeper, vibrating through the bones of the planet itself. The tribunal scrambled, their projected storms of human failure flickering in and out of coherence, as if the very memories they wielded as weapons were being rewritten in real time. The energy fields around the floor pulsed with an intelligence they could not control, and the human, still unarmed, still unbroken, stepped forward, feeling the pulse not as sound, but as an unspoken truth. Outside, the sky above the planet had turned molten. Storms of violet lightning danced across alien spires, striking in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Cities quaked, towers bowed under invisible weight, and ships in orbit swerved to compensate for a sudden surge in gravitational distortion. Somewhere deep within the planet, the artifact awakened fully, responding to the presence of the one it had chosen. The hum transformed into a low, resonant chant that threaded through every living creature sensitive enough to hear. The chosen human, and the empires that thought they ruled all. The tribunal's confidence faltered. Their accusations, rehearsed and sharpened over millennia, began to collapse under the pressure of something they could not comprehend. Every argument, every holographic assault of human misdeeds, became noise, mere static against the rising authority of the artifact. For the first time, the empires felt fear, not of physical weapons, but of revelation, a force older than their histories, judging them in ways they could not resist. The human lifted a hand, not in command, not in defiance, but in acknowledgement. And in that single gesture, the artifact poured its energy through him. Visions unfolded, not of destruction, but of understanding. He saw humanity's failures, yes, but also the ingenuity, the adaptability, the unyielding will that had carried the species across star systems, through disasters, and beyond every expectation. He saw the moments when humans had made impossible choices, gambled with survival, and emerged not unscathed, but stronger. Every conquest, every rebellion, every act of courage and mercy was laid bare, shining with the potential the empires had never allowed themselves to see. The tribunal recoiled as their own archives, once thought absolute, turned against them. Data streams warped, revealing truths they had hidden even from themselves. They saw the chains they had placed on countless civilizations, the ruthlessness they masked as order, and the arrogance of believing any species could be contained. And through it all, the human remained calm, a living conduit for a force older and wiser than their councils, a bridge between condemnation and awakening. Then, as if the universe itself acknowledged the anomaly, the artifact expanded its influence beyond the chamber. Alien networks faltered, planetary defenses flickered, messages meant to intimidate human colonies scrambled into incomprehensible patterns. Every eye that looked toward the chosen human, every sensor tuned to monitor his movements, now saw only clarity and inevitability. Humanity was not a threat to be crushed, it was a force that could not be ignored, a variable the galaxy had underestimated for too long. In that charged silence, the human spoke, not in words, but in resonance, in the unshakable certainty of presence. The artifact pulsed in agreement, affirming what no tribunal, no council, no empire could articulate. Humanity's defiance was not reckless. It was essential. Its moral compass, its intelligence, its stubborn will, all of it mattered. And the galaxy would soon learn that a species willing to endure, adapt, and understand was far more formidable than any weapon forged by alien hands. The tribunal, for all their centuries of experience, felt the first seeds of panic. They had come expecting a human to bend, to plead, to fracture under scrutiny. Instead, they faced a conduit of power that transcended fear, a living testament to resilience, and a warning that the universe had always been larger, more complex, and far more human than they had dared believe. The artifact's hum grew, a heartbeat syncing with the human's own, and for the first time, the galaxies whispered in awe, the condemned had become the chosen. The moment stretched, weightless, as if the universe itself paused to witness the transformation. The human's chest glowed faintly where the artifact had aligned with his being, a halo of energy rippling outward in waves no barrier could contain. The tribunal, once haughty and unyielding, stumbled backward, their accusations dissolving in the face of a force older than any empire. Their minds scrambled for control, for understanding, but the artifact had chosen clarity over chaos, and their centuries of certainty meant nothing against it. Outside the chamber, Argoni's prime shuddered violently. Buildings that had stood for millennia twisted like molten wax under invisible currents of energy. Lightning arced unnaturally, drawn toward the planet's core, where the artifact's presence resonated with a strength that rivaled the stars themselves. Ships in orbit jerked in unison, instruments screaming against the sudden fluctuations in the planet's electromagnetic field. Every sensor, every watcher, every empire that had monitored humanity felt the pulse, felt the signal that a species once dismissed as weak now held dominion over destiny itself. Inside, the human raised his arms slowly. The artifact flared, and with each beat of its energy, memories of humanity's defiance, its triumphs, failures, sacrifices, and ingenuity, projected outward in spectral streams of light. Alien delegates flinched as visions of entire worlds rose and fell, of children surviving against impossible odds, of fleets vanquishing foes larger and more advanced, of humans walking into annihilation and returning stronger. These were not warnings, they were proof that humanity's audacity could not be contained by fear or judgment. The human moved forward, and with each step, the floor beneath the tribunal's feet seemed to hum in resonance with the artifact, weaving a rhythm of inevitability that no alien power could disrupt. Energy ribbons spiraled upward, forming a luminous bridge between the condemned and the cosmos, connecting the human to the very threads of space-time. The tribunal tried to flee, but the bridge extended, not as imprisonment, but as revelation, forcing each member to confront the truth they had ignored. Humanity was neither subordinate nor predictable. It was singular, remarkable, unstoppable in ways they could barely comprehend. A hush fell over the chamber, broken only by the subtle, cosmic hum of the artifact. The human opened his eyes, and in their depths was a clarity that rivaled supernovae. He was no longer simply a representative of a planet, a species, or even a rebellion. He was the conduit for something the galaxy had never seen, a living reckoning. Every empire, every council, every entity that sought to dominate or manipulate now had to recognize the inescapable fact: humans did not obey. Humans endured, adapted, and shaped the universe with the quiet audacity of beings who refused to yield. And then the artifact spoke, not in words that could be heard, but in certainty that could be understood. Its resonance wrapped around the chamber, around the planet, around the fleets above and the cities below, conveying a singular truth: the human was no longer condemned. He was chosen. Humanity itself had been marked for a role greater than any empire, greater than any cosmic order. The tribunal staggered, their confidence shattered, their authority meaningless. Panic sparked, then spread, as they realized that centuries of judgment, centuries of superiority, had no bearing against the tide of human defiance now amplified by an ancient cosmic force. Every calculated plan to suppress, control, or eliminate humanity collapsed in an instant. The galaxy had been warned, and the warning carried the weight of inevitability. The human exhaled, and the chamber pulsed in sync with that breath, a rhythm that echoed beyond the planet, beyond the fleets, beyond the very understanding of what the galaxy thought it knew. This was not the end of humanity's struggle, it was the beginning of its claim. The artifact had awakened. And with it, a species long underestimated rose to stake a place among the stars that no alien power could contest, and in that silent, electric moment, the universe paused, listening. The condemned had become the harbinger of a new era, the energy cascading from the artifact spread outward, brushing the edges of the chamber like living light. The tribunal reeled, their rigid forms trembling under the weight of revelation. Each member felt the pulse through their neural interfaces, through the deepest layers of their intelligence networks, and through instincts honed over millennia. None had ever encountered anything that could withstand the judgment of the artifact while simultaneously commanding it. And the human, still unarmed, still unshielded, still undeniably alive, was the axis of it all. Outside, Argoni's prime convulsed. Mountains of alien architecture bent, shattering into fragments that glimmered in the violet glow of the artifact's influence. The sky had become a living canvas, streaked with ionized lightning, auroras twisting into patterns that spelled a language older than any empire could comprehend. Ships and satellites that had once monitored human activity now transmitted warnings in static, their instruments unable to reconcile the reality of a species the galaxy had miscalculated. Entire fleets hesitated at the edge of orbit, caught in a gravitational ballet orchestrated by a human and a relic older than any star. Inside the chamber, the human began to move with deliberate grace. Each step sent resonant pulses into the floor, each pulse unraveling layers of alien defenses the tribunal had assumed invulnerable. Holographic judgments, the wars, betrayals, and so-called failings of humanity, dissolved into threads of understanding. The human did not deny the flaws, instead, he embodied their lessons, letting the artifact translate them into a narrative of resilience, ingenuity, and unyielding moral depth. What had once been presented as evidence of weakness now became proof of the species' singular capability to endure, adapt, and overcome. The Tribunal's projections became frantic, attempting to reassert control. But the artifact resisted every command, every effort to contain it. Its light spilled into the air, coiling around the human like protective armor, each ribbon of energy carrying the cumulative wisdom of untold millennia. The human extended his hands, palms outward, and the projections that had sought to shame him now lifted, spinning in luminous arcs that mirrored constellations in motion. The galaxy watched as an individual, alone yet unbreakable, transformed condemnation into clarity, accusation into revelation. In the midst of chaos, a quiet clarity emerged. The human felt the weight of history, the burden of choice, and the power of consequence converge within him. He understood that humanity's defiance was not a challenge to authority, but a statement of identity. Every innovation, every moral choice, every act of courage and mercy was a thread in the tapestry that now resonated with the artifact. The Tribunal realized too late that their role was not to judge, but to witness. Their centuries of control and manipulation could not stand against a species that had learned to wield its own imperfections as instruments of power. From the center of the chamber, the artifact expanded, projecting visions not as warnings but as lessons. Entire worlds rose and fell in holographic simulations, but the collapse of empires now highlighted the ingenuity and moral resolve of humanity. Plans meticulously constructed over millennia unraveled, revealing the arrogance of believing a species could be predicted or contained. The human, a single conduit, had illuminated a truth so profound that the galaxy's ancient powers faltered before comprehension. Humanity was neither subordinate nor dangerous in the expected way. It was the unforeseen variable, the force no council or empire could anticipate or restrain, and as the artifact's resonance reached its crescendo, the human lifted his eyes to meet the Tribunal's gaze. There was no fear in them, only inevitability. The galaxy could have continued to condemn, continued to attempt control, but the choice had shifted. Humanity would not bow, and now, with the artifact's power intertwined with its will, the empires understood that they had underestimated more than a species. They had underestimated the very principle of defiance itself. The stars themselves seemed to lean in, bearing witness to the moment. A species condemned by all had become the signal that the galaxy could not ignore. The chamber trembled, and with it, the very concept of power in the galaxy began to shift. The Tribunal, faces pale beneath their ceremonial masks, realized that the human before them no longer belonged solely to Earth, to his species, or even to the laws of time as they knew them. He had become a nexus, a living conduit through which the artifact's wisdom and force pulsed, shaping reality with every subtle motion. The projections of past misdeeds, once meant to shame, now radiated a quiet dignity, showing that humanity's choices, messy, flawed, daring, had forged a species capable of rising above even the most oppressive judgment. Outside the chamber, the planet quaked in response. Mountains cracked like porcelain, rivers boiled and shifted courses, and the alien cities bent and fractured, caught in the artifact's expanding influence. Ships in orbit faltered, weapons systems misfired harmlessly into the void, and communications networks scrambled as if the universe itself had declared a ceasefire, waiting for the consequences of this singular convergence to unfold. Across light years, human colonies and alien outposts alike recorded anomalies impossible to explain, gravitic waves pulsing from the planet. Radiant signatures of power entwined with reason, a resonance that was not aggression but inevitability. Within the chamber, the human began to move deliberately among the Tribunal. Each step sent ripples of energy that seemed to untangle the arrogance and centuries of pride that bound these empires together. The holographic judgments of humanity's past, present, and projected future bent toward clarity under the artifact's guidance. Wars became lessons, rebellions became proof of intelligence and moral courage, mistakes became blueprints for survival. The human, silent yet luminous, carried the weight of this revelation effortlessly, and for every accusation hurled at him, the artifact returned a reflection of what had been gained. Endured and learned, the Tribunal faltered, their voices now whispers against the overwhelming resonance of truth. They had come expecting fear, submission, perhaps a plea for mercy. Instead, they faced calm, a quiet certainty that radiated from the human like a star undimmed by distance. Each delegate felt their authority slipping, their centuries of control collapsing under the inexorable logic of a species they had assumed naive, weak, and manageable. And as they struggled to maintain composure, the human raised his arms, and the artifact responded with a brilliance that filled every corner of the chamber, every eye, every sensor. Outside, the sky turned to liquid fire. Lightning danced in impossible geometries. Auroras spiraled across the planet's poles, and gravitational anomalies played across orbiting fleets, reminding every observer that the laws they thought fixed were merely suggestions. The human's presence, amplified through the artifact, was rewriting the understanding of possibility itself. Where fear had reigned, awe now took root; where judgment had dominated, humility began to bloom. Every empire that had sought to dominate humanity now felt the undeniable weight of its ingenuity and defiance. The human's eyes glowed faintly, reflecting not malice or triumph, but comprehension. He understood the centuries of oppression, the cosmic arrogance, the moral blindness of those who had sought to suppress a species not yet fully known. And he understood his own role, not as conqueror, not as judge, not as savior, but as a reminder that intelligence paired with moral courage, perseverance paired with reflection, and audacity paired with restraint could shape the course of galaxies. The artifact's pulse intensified, rippling outward in waves of light and vibration. The Tribunal, finally unable to resist, collapsed into awe and uncertainty. Every plan they had ever conceived, every threat, every method of control, now appeared laughably insufficient against a species that refused to break, refused to kneel, refused to exist only as history's footnote. Humanity had become the narrative itself, unpredictable, relentless. Enduring, and luminous with potential the galaxy had failed to measure, and the human, standing at the center of the chamber, became both witness and herald, the bridge between judgment and understanding, the embodiment of defiance that no empire could silence. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The chamber shuddered with a force that felt cosmic in scale. The human's body was no longer merely human, it was a conduit for the artifact, and the artifact's resonance now filled every corner of the room, every vessel in orbit, every sentinel watching across light years. The Tribunal tried to resist, tried to reclaim control, but their networks, their defenses, their centuries of meticulous strategy buckled under a force they could not measure, let alone command. For the first time in history, they understood what it meant to face a species whose potential could not be contained by fear, law, or war. Outside, Argoni's prime writhed under the surge of energy. Mountains split, oceans churned, and alien cities fractured as if reality itself were being rewritten. Storms of violet lightning danced with an intelligence that mirrored the human's own will, striking with precision and purpose, bypassing structures without harming life, demonstrating mastery not of destruction but of guidance. Fleets in orbit hesitated, their weapons systems now irrelevant. Communications, once used to intimidate, were scrambled by gravitational and electromagnetic pulses emanating from the planet. Every observer, every alien empire, every corner of the galaxy felt the same undeniable truth. Humans had arrived. Inside, the human raised a hand, and the artifact responded, sending luminous tendrils of energy flowing outward. The holographic archives of judgment, the accusations of wars, the catalogue of errors and failings, transformed into a radiant display of resilience. Each event, each rebellion, each moral choice was illuminated with clarity, showing not weakness but intelligence, courage, and moral depth. Humanity's story, once misunderstood and belittled, now shown as a testament to the species' capacity to endure and to thrive, even when all odds were against it. The Tribunal staggered, their composure unraveling. They had come expecting submission, expecting fear, expecting human inadequacy to be laid bare. Instead, they were confronted by inevitability, a species that did not bend, did not break, and had now become a living manifestation of cosmic judgment. The artifact pulsed in synchrony with the human, amplifying the resonance until it became a force felt across the stars. Every empire that had assumed superiority now felt the trembling of their certainty, the fragile nature of their dominance, and the immutable truth that humans could not be contained. The human moved forward, his presence a calm, unshakable force. The light of the artifact wrapped around him like a mantle of authority. Not imposed, but inherent. Every accusation, every attempt at suppression, dissolved in the radiance of insight and endurance. The tribunal realized, too late, that the galaxy had miscalculated. Humanity's defiance was not recklessness, it was inevitability, moral purpose, and intelligence fused with the unyielding will to survive. The very act of standing, of enduring, of thinking and choosing, had become a weapon more powerful than any fleet or empire. Beyond the chamber, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The artifact's energy reached across interstellar distances, and human colonies felt its pulse as a subtle hum in the fabric of space, a reminder that their species was no longer to be underestimated. Aliens, observers, councils, all entities that had believed themselves masters, now understood the immutable law of defiance. Humans endured, humans adapted, humans reshaped reality itself. The human lowered his hands, and the glow of the artifact dimmed just enough to reveal the calm in his expression. He had not destroyed, he had not conquered, yet his presence had rewritten the understanding of power, of judgment, and of potential. The tribunal could do nothing but witness, powerless. As the truth radiated outward, humanity was not to be feared, and yet could not be ignored. Its resilience, intelligence, and moral depth were now a force that no empire, no council, no weapon could challenge. And in that charged, infinite moment, the galaxy understood the final, unassailable truth. The species it had underestimated for millennia had awakened fully, and so, the stars learned to fear the sound of a human heartbeat.